Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. Today you are about to discover the Liar's Gambit, a gambit I've recently discovered that has completely blown my mind. I've studied it thoroughly to share it with all of you, so you can enjoy it as much as I do. And not only that, but so you can start winning many games thanks to it. Plus, it's a gambit that occurs after the two moves e4 and e5. That is, very popular moves, as you know, so you'll be able to play it in many, many games. That's why I like it so much, for that and for how spectacular it is. By the way, let's do a challenge to see if you like this video. Since I'm making this video for you for free, how about leaving a like, and let's see if we can reach 500 likes. That might seem like very little to you because you're used to seeing very big YouTubers, but I prefer having a small audience, as long as you're the best. So if you leave a like before we start, I'll truly be grateful to you forever. Now then, let's get started with this brutal gambit. I'll start with a move we've already seen on the channel, the move e4. We've seen this in a few other gambits, however. It won't be the same old thing, but a very novel gambit. Why are you giving away, chess teacher, this very important pawn? On the second move, yes, well, we've always been taught that we shouldn't give away material, especially if it's a central pawn. Well, that's the good thing about a gambit. A gambit means we give away material in exchange for having much more of an attack than our opponent. So when they capture this pawn, how should we respond? Well, we should respond by attacking it with this knight. Notice one thing, if your opponent here is careless and plays a move that doesn't defend this pawn, we simply recapture it, and look at that, we've already recovered the material. However, the most common thing is for them to defend this pawn. And if I ask you, let's see, a normal developing move to defend this pawn, you'd normally say, for example, right? Knight f6. To me, it seems like a completely normal move. It would also be very normal, as some of you surely thought, bishop f5. And it also seems like a super correct move, okay? Knight f6 is much more common, so let's start with this one here. What we're going to do is directly as if it were a Spanish opening, but in reverse. If you don't know what the Spanish opening is, don't worry. It's this move here, but in reverse, we do it on the other side. Why is this move so interesting? Well, we're attacking this pawn defended by a knight. So if the one defending is this knight, we're gonna attack this knight. So what should the black pieces do? Well, they must defend this pawn again. Why? Because if it were our turn again, we'd capture this knight, and when they recapture, then we could recapture this pawn because the defender would no longer exist. That's why it's so important that when we play this bishop here, they defend this pawn again with this move right here. I say with this move here because notice that there is no other move, no other possibility to defend it. With the queen, it wouldn't be possible because we have the knight. So bishop f5, a completely unique move. And now, how are we going to continue? Well, you probably won't expect this move because it's a bit strange, but it's a star move of the gambit. We're going to place the queen on e2. The main reason we do this is to keep attacking this point. We're attacking with the knight, and we're attacking with the queen. It looks like we attack with two and they defend with two, but they're really only defending with one because we can take out this knight whenever we want. Now, I'm sure you're all thinking, wait, chess teacher, you're going crazy. Now, there's a very easy way to defend this pawn, by capturing this pawn that you just hung by moving the queen. Look how easy it is. I take this pawn, and I also defend this pawn with 3 pieces. What happened here, chess teacher? Have you gone crazy? And what do I always tell you? Obviously, I'm going crazy, but it's because this works. Now, when the queen comes to capture this pawn, we're simply going to come here to give this check and attack the bishop. A double attack. Notice one thing. When we move queen e2, our goal was never to capture this point here, which is what everyone thinks. Our goal is to come through here. That's why when they capture this pawn, which they will 90% of the time, they've lost the game after this spectacular move. Check, and we'd take the bishop. However, many of you are thinking, wait, chess teacher, today you've really lost it, because if it's check and I attack the bishop, I just defend it with the bishop itself. But you're forgetting that we also attack this point here. We take this pawn, and now friends and friends, friends and friends, no friends and friends, we're attacking this rook that seems very hard to defend. They can't bring the queen here defended by the knight because our knight is there, but they do have this move here, right? You'll say, chess teacher, they defend everything here. Well, then we'd slip in through here and practically deliver a checkmate. What happens? They have this queen that can come back to block. So this move wouldn't be as good as it seems. What should we do, chess teacher? If I can't take the rook and I can't go in for checkmate, well, don't worry, because this queen, no matter how much they attack it, isn't moving from here because we have the brilliant bishop pin move. Notice that now this bishop cannot capture the queen because it's pinned against its own king. And so the only move that saves and defends this bishop is to come with the queen to interpose, right? They block the queen, they block the bishop, and this is where they want us to trade queens. Why? Because they have an extra pawn. However, now that the queen is no longer here, we can slip in and give them this checkmate where the king can't get out of here. We'll start by playing d4. This is the move you should start playing to perform the gambit, and they almost always respond with d5. If not, well, we can try to do it a little bit later, but the trap, as such, it works with d4, d5, okay? We'll play e4, giving away a super important pawn, and now we're going to attack it with the knight. You must remember this. You know, it's very easy to remember these traps because since you can watch the videos as many times as needed, well, simply, when you don't remember, you watch it again, and that's it. Super easy. You save the video, and that's it. We attack this pawn. They defend it either with the knight or with the bishop. It's okay because now we're going to attack the knight. They're going to defend it with the bishop. They have to do this. Why? I'm going through it so fast. Because if they don't do this, we would directly win back the material. Okay? That's why it's most common for them to defend that pawn, so as not to lose material. Star move here. Do you remember or do you not remember? Queen e2. Is queen e2 mainly to attack this pawn and win back material? Nah, that's what they think. But no, our main objective is, no matter how much we give away another pawn, we want to come over here to give the check, attack the bishop, and take this pawn here. Obviously, the only option they have is to come with the bishop, because any other option, for example, blocking the check, we would take the bishop, and this really would be too much material advantage, right? So we calculate directly coming here. When we capture this pawn, which we must capture, okay? It's the only move that gives us the advantage. Capturing this pawn when they defend with the bishop, then notice that there's no other way than to come with the bishop here, because if they come with the knight, for example, we would take the rook. That's why all of these are forced moves. What does forced moves mean? Studying forced moves means those moves that the opponent has to make no matter what. That's why these gambits are so effective, because we already know what moves our opponent must make no matter what. Okay? Now, when they play bishop c6, what were we going to do? Pin this bishop with the move bishop b5, and now we've seen that this move was a disaster because we were slipping in to give mate. But there are other moves like, for example, queen d7, continuing to defend against the mate. So first, we trade this bishop here. Important. And now they have two moves. If they capture with the queen, checkmate again. Look at those attacks. If they capture with the knight, we take the rook. So they can't capture with either the queen or the knight. And if they don't capture this bishop, they would simply be losing the queen because of the pin. What does this mean? That queen d7 is a move, or rather a disaster of a move. Queen b6 would be checkmate. Queen d7 is also a disaster because of bishop takes bishop. So what other options do the black pieces have then? Sure, you'll tell me. If I move the queen, I lose. It doesn't matter where I move her. So, well, look, I'll let this rook be captured, and I'll capture this bishop at least, only lose the exchange. I'm up a pawn. It's absolutely fine. However, here we're not going to capture the rook, but instead we're going to recapture this bishop with the knight. Very important. Remember this, okay? If I come here with the bishop and they capture the bishop, I'll recapture with the knight. And now the threat is massive. They can't do anything. I attack the queen, and not only that, but I attack this point right here. And not only that, but the rook as well. And many of you will tell me, well, there's a move that seems to defend practically everything, which is this one. Well, this one defends the rook, but we always have this move right here, check, and we take the queen. And not only that, but we have a brutal checkmate. And how would this checkmate go? We simply come to give check over here. They must block with the queen, and then we would jump with the knight to give check. Neither the knight nor the queen can be captured. The knight can't be captured because the queen is pinned, and the queen can't be captured because it's the knight. That's giving check, incredible or left. Okay, this is very important. When they capture this central pawn, we'll play the knight, they play the knight, we come to attack, and now, super important, we play queen e2. What happens if they don't capture this pawn, chess teacher? Because you're basing the whole video on them capturing that pawn. But well, it's very likely they won't capture it because they've seen this check right here. Well, all right then. It's very likely, and it can happen. For example, they can play e6, directly defending this bishop. It's true, it's a much better move. However, I'm also going to show you how to punish it. By the way, I've sometimes received a comment that tells me the following. These videos don't work because if they play perfectly, they beat us. Look, this is very important, okay? Whenever they play perfectly against us, they're going to win. Always, right? Only machines are capable of playing perfectly. So these videos are for learning how to punish the opponent's mistakes. If your opponent makes this mistake, you'll know how to punish it. And it can also be very useful so that you don't make them yourselves. So these videos are much more useful than you might think. I've won many chess tournaments throughout my life. And I promise you that learning this is very helpful, right? So now we move on to the important part. What happens if they discover that we've played queen e2 to come here and not to recapture the pawn, and they play, for example, e6, right? Well, first of all, I'll tell you that now, having protected this and not having come through here, whenever you want, you can recover the material. Like, for example, bishop takes knight, and when they recapture, we capture this pawn. What? Because you already know that now we have two pieces attacking and only one defending. We can eliminate this knight whenever we want. Aside from that, I think there are much better moves than capturing this knight, and I'm going to show you which ones are better in my opinion. We'll start with long castling. Look, a castle where the rook is already on the same file as the queen, a super powerful file. So now seeing that they're stuck, for example, in this pin that's so offensive for their knight, right? Notice that this knight will never be able to move because the queen is there. The queen is also around here. Well, the very logical move, right, is to develop this bishop to e7. Notice it blocks the pin, and it doesn't have a much better square anyway, because it doesn't attack anything here, right? There's no pin or anything. Bishop e7 is the most common move by far. All right, so what could you do here? Could you do the same thing again, capturing this knight and then capturing this pawn? Definitely. Whenever you feel lost in this gambit, you can win the pawn back, and you're left with the same material we had at the start, and a good attack. However, as I said, there are much better moves. In this case, we're going to continue with the gambit line. We're going to play f3. Now black is going to be rubbing their hands together. Why? Because they were thinking, damn, I want an extra pawn at the start. It all seems so simple, but they can take it back whenever they want. And with us playing f3, they've seen the light. Because they can trade this pawn, get rid of the extra pawn they had, and simply when we recapture it, well, we've made a pawn trade, and black is left with an extra pawn. So how are we going to get this pawn back? Well, with the knight. We want to develop our knight in exchange for losing this pawn, which is a gambit. We give away a pawn in exchange for having much more initiative and much more of an attack. Black is ready to castle, for example, but it's already too late because we have a super well-managed attack. Look, don't learn the moves by heart. Instead, it's better to memorize the attack plan. Right now, what is the attack plan? Well, it's that we have a spectacular attack on the enemy's castle. For example, with these two pawns. I'm telling you, you won't even notice when you carry out the attack that you're down a pawn because it's impossible. Right? How's our attack going to start? In this case, with knight to e5, a super strong move. What am I aiming for with knight to e5? I'm not trying to threaten anything, because notice it doesn't threaten anything. but to place a knight in an excellent position to be able to advance our pawns while they're supported and launch a totally spectacular attack on the king. Besides, there's no pawn that can threaten this knight. They can only threaten it with the other knight, but we don't care. Whatever they do, we make this move right here. A super powerful move that attacks the bishop. You might ask, let's see, can they trade for this knight? No. Mistake, a very serious mistake, because by recapturing, you make a discovered attack on the queen. You attack the knight, you attack the bishop, and they're going to lose a lot of material here. So right now, they wouldn't be able to recapture the knight. Okay, if they can't recapture the knight, how should they continue? Well, obviously, by moving this bishop, they have no other choice. And by moving this bishop, we're going to come in with this other pawn. Look at what a brutal attack. We're carrying out on the queen side. We're launching a brutal attack on the castle, and not just the castle. Now, if they get distracted and make any move, like this one for example, we'd simply win the bishop because it can't go anywhere. Notice that here we also have the knight and the queen. So there's only one move that works here, which is this one right here. It leaves a free space for the bishop, and not only that, but it also attacks our bishop. But this is already a serious mistake. Why? Because they're weakening themselves too much. How could things continue? Well, we would simply capture this this pot. Sorry, I don't know how to talk. This bishop here with the knight, forcing them to recapture this knight because we're also attacking the rook. So when they recapture, look at the weakness that's been created over here. This pawn is moved, we can go in to give check with the queen, and this would be terrifying for the black pieces. Notice that now they can't capture here because it's check. They'd have to move the king. And when they move the king, look at how we have such a strong attack with all our pieces coordinated, which is what's important, and that's why we gave up the pawn, to have much more of an attack. And look at this right now. Do you care about being down a pawn? First, we've already recovered it. And second, look at our bishops, our queen, our pawns, our rooks. We're completely winning. The black pieces can't do absolutely anything here. Look, there was a game. If you want, I'll show you how to punish it quickly. Where they played this here to try to save themselves, I looked to see if there was a game with these exact moves, and there was one. For example, this one tried to defend with this move. He simply advanced this pawn. Why? Because if he captures the bishop, it would simply be checkmate right here. So this bishop is totally untouchable. It's a bishop that cannot be captured. In this case, they came here with the knight to try to defend and attack the queen, but notice that this is absolutely useless. The attack is completely lethal. No matter how much they come with the attack to attack our queen, we have much better moves. In this case, for example, what would it be? Capturing this pawn here with our pawn, thus giving a check to the king. They can't capture because it would be checkmate shortly, so they'd better move the king instead. And then the sacrifice simply came through here. We sacrifice even more pieces. No matter how much they capture, we can enter with the rook, and this would already be checkmate. Look, what a brutal way to punish this enemy king. And now I'll review two typical mistakes that the black pieces make when we play this gambit. I'll go over them quickly because they're very easy to punish. And also, after these two mistakes, I'll quickly show you a trap very similar to this one, but with the black pieces that you can also perform. Okay? So first of all, when they capture us here and we come here, we must come with the bishop. Now we've seen that this was a mistake, right? So what about playing knight to c6? A normal developing move saying, well, I won't defend this pawn because I know you'll get it back whenever you want. Chess teacher, can I now capture this knight like you've told me several times in this video, and when they recapture, take this pawn? Of course. I've already told you one thing. Whenever you say, oh, I don't know how to continue, you can win the pawn back by taking this knight and taking here. And on top of that, you'll have a good center. However, there are better options, okay? For example, if they play knight to c6, a better option is to play d5, attacking this knight very strongly. Notice that when it moves here, for example, we can come in with the queen, attacking the knight and attacking the pawn with two pieces. It won't even be necessary to capture this knight, and we'll have a much better position. For example, later by castling long, if they come this way, we castle long and put on tremendous pressure. And our position is much better than our opponents, simply being a pawn down. And not only that, but we can win the pawn back whenever we want, and we'll have equal material and a much stronger attack. And a very typical mistake when we play this gambit before all this, look, here we've attacked the pawn, they defend it with the knight, but not before all this, but right at the start, attacking the pawn, they defend it with another pawn. At first glance, it already looks like a bad move, but you must know how to punish it, okay? A very valid option is applying the principles I've explained. Playing f3, capturing here, and developing the knight. We'd have a much better position with this black pawn here that doesn't belong at all. But there's an option I love that's won me many games, which is placing this bishop here, tempting our opponent to threaten it, and it looks like they have it trapped, right? So here they've already lost the game after the move queen to h5 check, and notice the king is super weakened on this diagonal. Now, having moved this pawn, they can't block with this pawn, which would be very easy to defend. With this pawn here, they're forced to move the king this way. Look at what an ugly position. There's no way to save themselves from here. For example, we can continue with bishop to c4, putting pressure on this diagonal. In fact, they can never take this bishop because we take their rook in return. So this would be totally won for us. And now, to finish on a high note, I'm going to show you how to use a little trap with the black pieces that's very similar to this trap we've done with the white pieces. You're going to love it. Let's go. And now we reach the final trap with the black pieces, which is very similar, and I'm sure you've seen it before, which is when they play d4. We're going to play e5 directly, giving away the pawn, and when they take it, we'll attack it with the knight. Notice that here they have two options to defend it. With the knight and with the bishop, just like what we saw with the black pieces. By the way, before I forget, please, if you've made it to the end of the video, remember that I work really hard on these videos. Leave a like, and any supportive comment is greatly appreciated. Really, because you only see the final result. You sit down and it looks perfect, but there's a lot of work behind them, okay? Thank you all so much. Here, they can defend the pawn with two options, knight f3 or even bishop f4. It doesn't matter to us, whatever they do, because if they play knight f3, for example, first, now we'll attack with the queen, and notice that the only option now is with the other piece, so the order doesn't matter. And here, we've already won the game with the same move. We come here, we didn't want to get the pawn back, but rather we wanted to give this check, win this bishop, and take over here. A very similar trap with the black pieces. What's your faith? Did you like it? Remember that if you love this video and you like the channel, you have both this channel available, as well as the digital channel. We have two channels with a daily video. You can subscribe to the one you like most, or both if you like it a lot, okay? And you'll have a daily video both on this channel and on the digital channel, Chess Teacher and Chess Teacher Digital. I hope you loved this video. I really loved recording it, and I'll see you in the next video, friends. Wow.